Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third edition of the Caribbean Future Summit. We are excited to welcome you all to this year's summit. My name is Daniel Tete, the Startup Programs and Project Manager at the Global Startup Ecosystem. The theme for this year's summit is a new Caribbean economy, tourism meets tech. We are looking to highlight the latest technology trends in the travel industry and the tourism industry at large. We feel both customers and businesses can benefit from improved communication, reservations, and guest services systems that the ecosystem brings and technology brings to the industry. Would welcome the first keynote speaker for this summit in the person of Honorable Carlos James, who is the Honorable Carlos James. Honorable Carlos James is the Minister of Tourism in St. Vincent and Grenadines. Welcome, Honorable Minister. We are really glad to have you at the Caribbean Future Summit.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for having me. What an interesting 2 years we've had from a global health pandemic, and here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we've had a eruption of our Las Surfe volcano. This has been quite a testing period for our local economy, but also for small island developing states who are tourism dependent. As most of you would know, that the Caribbean is perhaps the most dependent tourism region in the world, and these are some of the challenges that we continue to face. As the emerging and ever-changing dynamics of the global economy. And it brings me to the central point of my thesis. I mean, how do we ensure the sustainability of vulnerable small island economies in the changing world? And I think the word that jumps out is transformation. We have to grow, we have to adapt. We simply have to position our region to be more resilient and to ensure the sustainable transformation of our small island economies, including subsectors such as tourism, which continues to be the major contributor to most of the island's GDPs. Our policies and strategic focus must shift towards building more resilient economies. And we often, lament on the point building resilient economies, but what exactly does that mean? You look at the pandemic as an example, and the global economic shocks which followed, and even in 2008 when we had the housing crisis. Most of the visitors to the Caribbean islands are North Americans or they're Europeans, and we've had challenges where we've had a downturn in travel. Hotels are empty, airline seats are empty, and of course, the trickle-down effect with the spending adversely affect the global, not just the global, but the small island economies of these member states of the region. And how do we sustain ourselves to be more viable? How do we sustain ourselves to be more less reliant on having the physical spending in terms of a visitor coming to your island and spending? I mean, what ways can we use e-commerce and technology and emerging technology to advance and enhance our tourism product and our cultural industries? All of these questions are important to how we move forward in terms of our economy and how we sustain ourselves as small island states. And of course, every aspect of our development must be measured. How best are we using integrated data to better guide decisions and policies with respect to sustainable use of our resources? And I want to zero in on something that is fundamentally important for small island developing states, which we're facing numerous challenges from our remoteness, which affects our ability to be part of the global supply chain, increases in import costs, especially energy, our limits to being competitive because of all of these challenges. Not forgetting our increasing vulnerability to the impacts of climate change, from devastations of storms and the threat to sea level rise and droughts and sort of like what it is that we need to do in terms of the use of technology, which will drive our data gathering in developing trends, identifying where we have leakages within subsectors such as tourism, and their overall impact on our ecosystems. And one of the things that we often have to look at in terms of every aspect of our development must be centered around three main pillars, and that is sustainable livelihood. And we consider sustainable livelihood in contrast to economic leakage. Secondly, sustainable development goals. Everything that we do, not just within the tourism space, but the economy, must be centered around the sustainable development goals. And are we hitting those targets? And we do that in contrast to a number of the different challenges that we have. But thirdly, management of our resources. And we sort of looked at the context of managing our resources in contrast to tourism-related air emissions, water and energy consumption in tourism, environmental effects of having mass movement of people in terms of tourism. Recently, we had one island announce having over 1 million visitors for a cruise season between November to February, March of next year. What is the impact on those small islands ecosystem and the beaches and the marine life in terms of having that magnitude of movement of people within our small land space and landscape? All of these challenges and which we look at must be centered around these three main pillars: sustainable livelihoods, sustainable development goals, and management of our resources. What programs are we being developed to capture and measure the sustainable tourism indicators? A lot of attention is placed on the use of technology and digital media in tourism marketing, but we're seriously having a deficit in terms of developmental technology that captures data, expenditure, adverse impact on the industry and our ecosystems. And when we look at emerging technology and when we look at marrying technology with the tourism sector or the economy generally, we often go towards the more glamorous, exciting things such as marketing and social media, and not necessarily focus on creating the framework, the technological framework that is able to capture data, that is able to capture or leakage, that is able to capture how we are to implement strategic policies through the use of technology to enhance and to enhance our life, enhance our economies, but also to sustain the livelihood of a lot of our locals who are dependent on the resources from the subsectors. And when I mention economic leakage, we tend to focus on, yes, we have a lot of hotels, we had a lot of foreign direct investments, we had a lot of airlines coming. But when you look at the revenue that is derived from tourism, and most of that revenue it's either exported back out in profit to foreign companies, or it's either exported out to during the purchasing of raw materials or finished product. Within the small island states of the Eastern Caribbean, roughly 70% of major hotels, their budget on food and fresh produce are spent on purchasing raw materials or purchasing finished products from outside of the Caribbean market. Again, that is also revenue that is going out rather than coming in. And when we have to look at developing technology that can capture a number of these data-driven policies that can guide and enable us to ensure that we are able to measure and monitor how we spend, how we earn, what is the potential total contribution of tourism to our GDP within the framework of using the technology and the skills and the data that is able to give us these sort of answers. And these are the things that we should really pique our mind and our interest as to how we move forward in using technology within the tourism space. So it's not just about the glamorous idea of marketing and promotion and digital marketing, but also using data sets and emerging technology that can enable us to set policy and put the framework in place that captures data and inform how we are able to sustain ourselves and be more resilient within the concept of the ever-changing global landscape. I just want to briefly look at a few, expand on a few points. Sustainability is really a big word for us in the tourism sectors, particularly in small island states now, and how we'll be able to be more resilient within the context of expanding in tourism, expanding in services, but maintaining and preserving our ecosystems and our cultures and aspect of a way of life. So I want to look at the sustainable principles, which oftentimes refer to the environmental, economic, and the social, cultural aspects of our development, and a sustainable balance which must be created to establish between these three dimensions to guarantee its long-term or long-term sustainability as small island states. And to look at that within sustainable tourism, one, we should look at ensuring or viable and long-term economic operations, providing socioeconomic benefits to stakeholders that are fairly distributed. This is including employment, sustainable employment, income earning opportunities, social services, and the like, and to make optimal use of environmental resources that constitute key elements of the tourism development, maintaining essential ecological processes that help to conserve natural heritage and biodiversity. And of course, thirdly, respecting our social cultural authenticity of host communities, conserve their built and living cultural heritage and traditional values, going to contribute to the intercultural understanding and tolerance. All of these fundamental things are critical to our development, and of course, we have to find creative ways using our technology to ensure that we are able to capture data, we are able to produce sufficient information to drive policy. A lot of the times, our survival depends on data, it depends on science, it depends on how we are able to forecast changes in our ecosystems, changes in the movement of people, marketing trends, but also how are we able to capture our data in terms of leakage, in terms of what we would lose out on if we were to not invest within our local economy to ensure that we're able to supply and sustain our local economies. All of these things which I've mentioned are important if we are to focus technology and new technology and emerging technology on capturing data to drive our economies. And that is one of the critical things. Tourism is not just about sun, sea, and sand any longer. It's really more about data and science and how we can maintain our sustainable livelihoods, support the sustainable development goals, ensure our effective management of our ecosystem and our ecosystems and the environment, but at the same time, being an industry leader and of course supporting visitors and persons who take advantage of our beautiful beaches, our hotels, and of course to come to explore our culture and our identity as a people within the Caribbean space. But it is important that we are able to develop technology that can see a marriage between data gathering and that will enable us to inform how we make policy and we set the framework to ensure that all of the things which I've mentioned above are protected. I just want to quickly jump into one last point before I close, which is using emerging technology as a form of cultural export. It's something that we have looked at in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Of course, during the pandemic, a lot of our entertainers, musicians, artists, we've not had a carnival for 2 years between 2020 and 2021. This year, 2022, was the first time in 2 years we had a carnival. But the point remains, what happened to all of the stakeholders who are part of our cultural fabric and we use the tourism as a means of earning a livelihood? And one of the things that we came up with in St. Vincent is to explore the idea of using emerging technologies such as the metaverse to tap into exporting our cultural platforms and artists to different and entertainers and performers to different zones. For instance, you look at Southeast Asia and Japan, 126.7 million people. Just having 1% of those persons tapping into the Caribbean cultural hub, or an East platform or space that provides authentic Caribbean culture and authentic Caribbean heritage, and which they can purchase and log in and buy virtually, is one of the things that we have to look at. Our cultural export using creative and emerging technology. So, of course, we partnered with the Organization of American States and Meta. We had our first consultation and moving in that direction to see how we can tap into that as an export in terms of tourism. Similarly, that can be used not just in culture, but also aspects of our cultural identity and heritage as a tourism export. Using emerging technology. So we have to obviously look at how we can be more resilient in times of global pandemics, hurricanes, natural disasters, when there's a downturn in travel. What happens to our tourism industry? What happens to the many hoteliers and employees in these hotels, or taxi operators, and every single person who's employed within the tourism sector? The economy comes to a grinding halt, and we have to obviously look at emerging technology and using other platforms to, one, gather data to inform our decisions as how we move forward and how we adapt and we transform and we ensure that there's sustainable livelihoods for all. And two, using emerging technology to export parts of our culture to different parts of the world when they are unable to visit our islands and enjoy our beaches and our scenery. We have to use rapidly. We have to move into the direction of developing emerging technology that can really enhance and support the infrastructure that is needed to export our cultural identity and our services that we have to offer, but at the same time track the trends and how we can move forward and sustain ourselves within the whole global space. And I want to thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share some insights. And of course, I'm encouraging all of you to visit St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We are 32 islands and keys. It's one of the most beautiful Caribbean islands, and we're hoping to see you here very soon.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister.
Yes, and I also wanted to join in. I know Stan wanted me to give also a warm welcome to you, Honorable Minister Carlos James. Thank you so much for your remarks. I do want to echo and summarize like how powerful your message was to this year's edition of the Caribbean Future Summit. First off, talking about that we're not just sun, sea, and sunshine, that we will progress beyond the typical conversations around tourism, talking about data, talking about how to leverage the digital times that we're in to really progress even our economies in the Caribbean. And so I just want to give a very warm welcome formally as the founder of the Caribbean Future Summit. And also thank you so much for such a powerful remark. And thank you for the work that you do as the Minister of Tourism in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Thank you so much. It's been an honor and a pleasure to welcome you to the second annual Caribbean Future Summit, Honorable Minister. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. All the best.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. All right. So just wanted to give, again, just a very sincere gratitude and close out to the Honorable Minister, because as many of you know, each year we have a spotlight minister from one of the Caribbean islands. In the past, we've had a minister from Barbados, a minister from obviously Jamaica, and now the Honorable Minister from St. Vincent was able to grace us. And I really hope that everyone was able to take the wisdom and the feedback that he provided. Truly insightful and truly touching. As a Caribbean native myself, it's always an honor to see people who are in the field doing the work of the people and also sharing that insight with all of us as Caribbean nationals and friends of the Caribbean community. With that said, I know we'll be passing it back over to Stan, who will be, of course, formalizing and kicking off to our next amazing speaker. But I do want to take the time to formally introduce myself to the ecosystem and say thank you again, my name is Miss Christine Tim. I'm the founder and CEO of the Global Startup Ecosystem, which is the host organization of this Caribbean Future Summit. I've been on the Forbes list, featured in major media outlets for my work, not only across the Caribbean, but of course around the world. I've worked with many different ecosystem partners in the tech ecosystem, and it's truly been amazing for us to expand to across 60 different countries around the world with our tech summits in Haiti, Nigeria, Ghana, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, UK, United States, where we are based, but always make sure that we capitalize on the magnitude and opportunities that are happening in emerging markets like the Caribbean and Africa. And I'm pleased to, introduce that experience to you all with the second annual Caribbean Future Summit. With that said, I do want to stress that, the Caribbean Future Summit has been around now in its third year. We kicked off this summit series in 2020 during the pandemic. And then last year, it really grew and expanded to 2,400 delegates. And this year, in our third edition, we have over 50 global partners and many iconic speakers who will be joining you here today. So with that said, I just want to give a warm welcome to everyone. As we kick off the third edition, I'm so excited to have all your beautiful, shining faces from across the Caribbean, whether it's from Haiti, Jamaica, Barbados, St. Vincent, all of the above. Welcome. And I hope that all the speakers, when you come on, please give a shout out of which Caribbean island that you're calling in from. It's always an honor and a pleasure to see the power of the Caribbean now is so strong globally around the world. We're more than tourism. We're such an iconic region. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it back over to Stan, who's going to introduce our next amazing speaker. Heard a lot about her. I know she's on the back end right now, backstage. So I'm so excited to hear her talk. Stan, over to you. Let's welcome the iconic Dr. Diana Fox, who will be coming on next. Stan, over to you.
Thank you so much, Christine. We'll now transition to the next speaker, the keynote speaker for this Caribbean Future Summit. We have Diana Fox, who is a university director at the Institute for Gender and Development Studies at the University of West Indies. Welcome, Diana. We are really glad to have you at the Caribbean Future Summit.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Can I now share my screen? I believe I can. Let's see. Hopefully this is working. Sorry, everybody. I'm trying to figure out how to get in here. Here we go. Okay, I hope you can all see this now. Well, very good morning to all of you. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be here. As Stan mentioned, I am the new university director for the Institute for Gender and Development Studies in the Regional Coordinating Office in Jamaica. Today, I'm going to speak to you about achieving gender, economic, and climate justice for Caribbean futures, the contributions of the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, IGDS. My goal in this talk is to answer three questions. How can gender, economic, and climate justice co-create equitable and sustainable ways to grow back the region's workforce and close the gender gap? How can the IGDS help to build gender-aware competencies and workplace policies through training around gender, economic, and climate justice? And why is a gender approach necessary? To answer these questions, I'll begin with some definitions, creating shared understanding about the necessary direction of change. Then I'll summarize the impact of COVID-19 on gender inequality in the workplace and the home. We cannot consider one without the other. Next, I'll offer an overview of who we are at the IGDS, including our mission and vision, and I will conclude with recommendations for integrating gender, climate, and economic justice into the private sector and an unabashed plug for our consulting services. Successful Caribbean futures depend on gender-just futures. This is Sustainable Development Goal number 5, the nexus between gender, economic, and climate justice. First, let's get out of the way that feminism is not taboo. It's a body of scholarship and activism for gender justice, including economic and climate justice for women, LGBTI persons, Indigenous persons, the most vulnerable, Feminism fuels gender justice and equitable societies for the most vulnerable. Gender itself refers to the systems, structures, institutions, and ideas through which societies define, enact, and enforce differences in expectations, roles, and opportunities for people based on their perceived biological sex. Gender is not a code word for women. Gender is inclusive of women, men, and non-binary individuals. Some gender terms, for example, are masculinity, man and men, femininity, woman and women, and transgender, or whatever local language terms are used, whereas male, female, and intersex are biological sex terms. Gender justice is a society without gender-related asymmetries of access to or allocation of and control over status, power, and material resources. Climate justice, from the Mary Robinson Foundation, is defined as linking human rights and development to achieve a human-centered approach, safeguarding the rights of the most vulnerable people, and sharing the burdens and benefits of climate change and its impacts equitably and fairly. We must reconcile humanity with our living planet and arrest biodiversity loss that can lead to societal collapse. Economic justice is the idea that an economy is stronger and more successful if it is fairer, and that prosperity and justice go hand in hand. Similarly, environmental or ecological justice, climate justice, goes hand in hand with economic justice and gender justice. These are all interconnected. Gender mainstreaming, which is what we do at the IGDS, is a strategy of incorporating a gender perspective into organizational policies. For example, when we replace maternity leave with parental and caretaker leave, then we have a gender perspective in mind. It's also important to underscore that there's no such thing as gender neutrality. Projects are never neutral in the way they are designed. There is always a value system and priorities of an implementing organization, assumed or explicit. And projects that are assumed to follow neutral approaches usually fail to do so, and they instead constrain gender groups, reinforcing existing inequities. So let's now transition to COVID, the growing gender gap, and the shadow pandemic. The shadow pandemic is a feminist term to refer to the ballooning of domestic and intimate partner violence that occurred and is still occurring during the pandemic. It's not over, making home not so sweet. Violence against women and girls has been recorded on the rise by a UN Women's study of 5 Caribbean countries, Jamaica, Guyana, Grenada, Suriname, Trinidad, and Tobago, where one woman experienced at least physical, sexual, economic, and emotional violence. That is 1 in 3 women. Calls to helplines are up 5 times. And this is only the calls that have been received. Many women don't have access or the capacity to make phone calls. There's also been increased childcare and household responsibilities due to the closure of childcare and educational centers, yet the imbalances remain even as they have opened up. This is connected to workforce issues and the insufficient recovery. By the third quarter of 2021, the average unemployment rate for women was 12.4%, which is 2.5% below pre-pandemic levels. For men, it's 8.3%. This exacerbates existing structural inequalities. Rural women, women heads of household with young children, those with less training and education, Indigenous and Afro-descendant women are the most affected. And the sectors, as we know, are commerce, restaurants, hotels, and leisure. So what is the nexus between gender, economic, and climate justice? It's important to realize that women and children are more likely to die than men in natural and man-made environmental disasters. We just heard from the minister about the increasing climate crisis from growing power of storms. When resources are scarce due to these growing storms, and also the imbalance of the seasons now with extended droughts or flooding due to deforestation, women have been subjected to sextortion, that is exchange of sex in order to have access to basic necessities of water or firewood. And according to the World Economic Forum, less than 20% of land in the world is owned by women. So women's livelihoods take much longer to recover after these environmental and economic shocks. Yet there's a gender paradox. Women have more years of secondary school education, and they enroll in tertiary education more than men, 65%. Yet once outside of the gilded doors of academia, they're confronted by the challenges of gender inequity, lower pay, lack of parental support, insufficient protection from violence and harassment, and these in spite of all the protocols, regional, national, and international, to establish gender justice. Therefore, it is our view that the private sector must contribute to closing this gap to thrive. At the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, we are strengthening our ties to the private sector, encouraging interventions for gender, climate, and economic justice. Our mission is to produce and disseminate knowledge to transform gender relations in the Caribbean in support of the UE's mission to enhance regional and international development. Our vision is to ensure that UE graduates are committed to social justice, to gender responsive human relations. So when they graduate and they go into the workforce, they bring these perspectives with them into the workforce and into their homes and communities. Closing the gender gap means that we must partner for economic justice. We must integrate gender equality considerations. They must be a component of the design, elaboration, application, and analyses of the results of all programs, strategies, and laws. To promote gender and economic and climate justice, we have to take into account what recent studies have illustrated, that when men and women jointly manage our resources, there's better governance and improved conservation outcomes. Also, experts note that incorporating a gender focus increases the efficiency of climate change policy and development. And data shows that where women are leaders and have higher political participation, greenhouse gases emissions per capita are lower. So there are a whole series of policy and program objectives. Here are just a few. Mainstreaming, institutionalizing principles of non-discrimination and gender equality related to employment, active employment policies for women and the most vulnerable among them, work training and labor employment to incorporate women into these sectors, professional training policies emphasizing women's specific strengths, guaranteeing women's access to assets and productive loans, reintegrating women, parents, and caregivers into the labor force after periods of absence, and limiting the conflict between family and professional responsibilities. We hear of work-life balance. That means that women's heavy and unequal responsibilities for care, not just children and household responsibilities, but for the sick and the elderly, must be distributed equitably between men and women. And we have to expand public and private community services for children and dependent persons as part of this. And these industries can contribute to these possibilities. We want to partner with you to achieve these goals. We believe that success is the result of an integration of gender, climate, and economic justice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have you added me? Thank you so much, Diana. It was really interesting to hear the nexus between gender, economics, and climate crisis, and the various ways that we can champion gender equality within the various sectors of private industry and government industry as well. We are really grateful that you could share your thoughts and insights with us today at the Caribbean Future Summit, and we look forward to hearing more from you. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Okay. Up next, we transition to the panel discussion. The first panel for today, we have on the theme Sustainable Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Development, where speakers would share strategies in building collaborations, talents, etc., that can spur, and sustain economic growth in the post-pandemic era. To lead the discussion, we have Anceliana Ramos, who will take off this panel discussion in the next 30 seconds. Hello, Anseliana, and welcome. We're really glad to have you at the Caribbean Future Summit, Anseliana. Welcome. Um, Anseliana, you are muted. Okay. So as Angelina gets her mic ready, I would like to welcome Jeremy, Raquel, and Terry Ann to the stage. Um, Kindly introduce yourselves and tell us what you do at your organizations. We'll start with Jeremy.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm Jeremy Tamanini. I'm a New York City-based consultant, and I work at the intersection of data and sustainability. We publish something called the Global Green Economy Index, which looks at green performance in countries, including many island nations in the Caribbean. And we've also done some work around talent attraction in the green economy. So I'm very happy to be here for this discussion.
Okay. How about you, Raquel?
Hi, I'm Raquel Moses. I'm the CEO of the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator. And what we do is we help the region work collaboratively towards the creation of the world's first climate smart zone. Our intent is for us to get our climate ambition together and learn from each other, as well as to support the development of projects, working with entrepreneurs to execute those projects across the region. So we represent 28 countries. And in 24 of them, we call what are called execution countries. So it means that we will have projects on the ground, and that's what we do.
Thank you, Raquel. Terry Ann, finally.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I am Terry Ann Sigri. I'm with IDB Lab. I'm the Private Finance Operations Senior Specialist since March 2018. And I am responsible for the identification and design and implementation of development projects in Jamaica, Belize, and Bahamas. For those who don't know IDB Lab, we are part of the IDB group, and we are focused on innovation for inclusion across Latin America and the Caribbean. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for introducing yourselves and telling us what you do. I'll hand over back to Asiliana now. Hopefully she's back on. Okay, I think she's still having technical issues, so we'll continue with the panel discussions. Can you tell us, in your various institutions, projects that you are doing to empower entrepreneurs? So I'll start with Terry Ann this time.
Okay, so as I mentioned, IDB Lab is about funding projects, innovation for inclusion. Across the Caribbean, we have been doing a lot of projects in, firstly, building the ecosystem for entrepreneurs to thrive. And that requires a lot of support from the business service providers, building the technical capacity of the entrepreneurs. So we support programs with accelerators and incubators. We also provide different sources of funding, whether from grants to loans and equity. And in that, at the core of it, we are looking to support poor and vulnerable and the message around inclusion. So technology is core to what we're doing. And a lot of the businesses, we're looking forward to being able to work with them across health tech, GovTech, climate, and anything technology that will bring about an impact. We have programs that entrepreneurs can tap into, such as Tech Beach and programs in the Bahamas, in Trinidad and Tobago, and in Jamaica. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Jan. Raquel, what do you make of the pandemic reaction and how the Caribbean entrepreneurs can make resilient choices during these times?
Certainly, I think for us, when we take a step back and look at climate action and what's happening in this space, we think that the way that we are thinking and talking about it is the mistake that we're making, because we seem to think about it and talk about it as though it is a cost center, as though it is something that we should be fearful of. And while it is ominous and something is happening that is bad, at the end of the day, trillions of dollars will need to be spent on transitioning our economies. And there is no reason that the Caribbean shouldn't be at the forefront of creating those new solutions. So we have been encouraging entrepreneurs to look at the opportunities that exist. We're seeing all kinds of things. We're seeing sargassum transformation, we're seeing waste transformation, we're seeing energy systems, both small and large. And all of these present multiple opportunities for entrepreneurs across the region. We're seeing governments that want solutions that don't currently exist or that don't exist at scale. And so we need to be looking through the lens of, if we're thinking about like the digital revolution as an example. You know, a lot of people thought the internet wasn't going to work. A lot of people thought Amazon wasn't going to work. And then look at it now. And so what we need to understand is that we are at a tipping point where these solutions will take off. And unless Caribbean entrepreneurs aren't positioned well or aren't thinking about providing new solutions, then we will allow this opportunity to pass us by. So there are multiple resources that are available at the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator on our website. We have some of those resources, whether it is we have an investor forum where we match projects with investors. We have a financial advisory committee who are looking at projects that are ready for investment. We list grants that are available on our website. So all of these things, entrepreneurs need to just get themselves into position and understand that there are myriad opportunities. The pandemic taught us that whereas hurricanes typically put us on the back foot, the pandemic affected all of us. And so there is now an opportunity for us to move forward at the same pace or faster than others. And we need to take that baton and run with it.
Thank you so much. Jeremy, do you think startups have the same dream as they did before the pandemic, especially after everything we've been through over the past couple of years?
Wow. I think all of our dreams have changed in the past 2 to 3 years. I mean, you just can't underestimate the impact across the globe that the pandemic's happened. In my personal experience, this is not speaking to the Caribbean specifically. I think that it's a mixed bag. I mean, I think that on the one hand, the digitization of entrepreneurship, communication, cross-border collaboration has actually opened up a lot of opportunity. And I think that was really accelerated by the pandemic. And I think that in terms of entrepreneurship, that's definitely been an advantage in many ways, because as I know, having started my own practice, one of the great barriers is access to capital, access to people, access to opportunities. You know, when you're not part of a big organization, it's hard to fly to conferences, to fly to do a client pitch, to do all of these things that take money and resources and time. And digitization, you know, Zoom, this entire way of working that's become so normalized, I think has opened up a lot of opportunity. On the other hand, there's greater insecurity, and there's greater, there's just a general kind of sense of instability, I think, that the pandemic has initiated in this decade. I've personally been feeling it around the climate crisis for my entire adult life, basically. But I think there was something about the convergence of COVID with these increased natural disasters that we started to see very vividly in the 2010s and really amplified in the past 5 or 7 years, that is in a way making people more nervous about taking the risk towards entrepreneurship. So I would say it's a mixed bag, hard to sort of pinpoint one way or the other.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Terry Ann, do you think the pandemic reaction has made entrepreneurs more resilient, or are they shying away from pushing on agendas with their projects?
I think it has made most entrepreneurs more resilient. It's we weren't given a choice. The pandemic actually forced action. We saw that a lot of businesses during the pandemic had to close their doors, and others had to adapt to adjusting to how you reach your clients using technology. And I think just to piggyback on what Jeremy was talking about, I'm not sure if I agree that the dream for entrepreneurs have changed, because your dream is this big picture of success and growth and profit and impact. I think what has changed is the environment in which we operate, and the strategies that we need to change to these environments. And also, even it extends to our team and ourselves as founders, to how do we adapt to this, and that brings about a change, and change is constant, and it is not limited to the pandemic. So let's not cut it off at the pandemic, that this is the biggest thing that has happened. We don't know what will happen next year, 2 years from now. And resilience is all about being able to bounce back after some negative action, coming back, not just adapting, but putting in place solutions that could help you to recover as quickly as possible. And some of these, just to put out there, is, we have this gradual shift towards innovation and technology and adopting new business models that can transition and find new ways to reach our customers so that we're not impacted as much. There's also the increased awareness of the digital divide, and this provides opportunities for entrepreneurs to tap into these markets, financial inclusion, and just different ways for digital payments, and being able to connect to some of our most poor and vulnerable persons in our society. And Raquel also mentioned about climate change, and this is a constant, because we have to build this into our business models, whether we are operating in the tourism sector, which is a must, or we're operating in other sectors. Climate change will impact our businesses, and being resilient and planning for these is important. So I believe the dream remains the same, but I think our strategies and the way how we are going to evolve our business models to meet the changes that will come is very important.
Absolutely. It's important that you all highlighted the importance of resilience in certain situations, because it's resilience. If you show resilience within a pandemic or within a form of crisis, that will determine how far you go as a business or as an entrepreneur. So having that resilience is something that would push you ahead of your competition, I should say. Also, we are seeing some tourism companies that innovate early stage entrepreneurs as being some of the worst affected in the business world, especially during this post-pandemic era. And the effects of the lockdown that we've had, for almost every country had a lockdown during the pandemic. So I want to know, what advice do you have for tourism professionals that would want to navigate the lack of resources and funding? Because we realized that after the pandemic or post the pandemic, even during the pandemic, funding was an issue. So what advice do you have for tourism professionals that would want to navigate the lack of resources and funding? Jeremy, you can start this round.
Yeah, that's a great question. I know this is very relevant in the Caribbean region. I would say ecotourism. This is not just because it's something I've been tracking and measuring in Caribbean nations for 10 years now, but it's a zone, it's a subsector of tourism where there's increased interest, where there's a lot of opportunity for cross-pollination between the tourism sector and local entrepreneurs. For example, one thing that I love about this conference and the spirit of this conference is that it's framing the Caribbean as a green economy, as an ecosystem of entrepreneurship, as opposed to just a tourist destination. But I feel like sometimes as a tourist, I don't see that ecosystem in the tourism touch points in the Caribbean. So, for example, if I'm at a hotel or some sort of venue in Dominica, which I know has done a lot of work around resilience, and there's been some innovation in terms of entrepreneurship around there, I would like to know as a tourist what some of those local businesses are, what some of that entrepreneurship is. So, because in a way, the Caribbean has the most like captive audience imaginable in terms of all of the people that come to the region from a tourism perspective. So why not try to leverage some of that? It's not about pitching everyone on their vacation in like an aggressive way. It's just about like making those connections, through an interesting feature that might be in the lobby of a hotel or a presentation that's optional from a local entrepreneur. And then from that, opportunities emerge and you start to see connections, hopefully with eco services, green innovation, and foreign investment, foreign support for entrepreneurship that can begin to kind of build this ecosystem and this linkage between tourism and the broader economy in a more innovative way.
Okay. Terry Ann, what's your take on this?
Okay, so I think and I will go back to what I've said before. I think the transformation of business models become important in the adoption of technology. And piggybacking on what Jeremy just said, all of this, the connectivity becomes important. I just wanted to relate to a project that we're doing in Jamaica with Kingston Creative, calling their name, because we're looking at providing an app that can connect the local businesses so that travelers will be able to see who are the ones that they are able to locate within the downtown Kingston area, because you don't know the businesses that operate in downtown Kingston. For those who know it, you're probably a little timid to go there, but it's the cultural district of downtown. So being able to find the music, the art, all of this at your fingertip to say, where can I go if I want the latest fashion? Where can I go if I want the music? And you're able to then book these tours virtually. So it's that connectivity, and it doesn't relate to just Kingston or Jamaica, but how can we be able to facilitate cross-border identification of talent and businesses? And that's something that we need to do more. Even in the tourism sector, we're seeing we're using more data analytics to understand your visitor profile and preferences. This becomes something that could transform business models, using more technologies for experience and reservation. We saw a lot of that in the pandemic, but doing more of that. And then we're looking also at upskilling the workforce, because if we don't have a competent workforce that can adopt these new technologies and reach the client, then we're not going to transform the businesses. There are opportunity in new product development and medical and wellness tourism that we haven't really taken advantage of. And in environmental sustainability, there becomes tremendous opportunities that connect to tourism, climate smart agriculture, and even just a transition to circular economy, even from the hotel standpoint, becomes opportunities to be exploited. So the pandemic has opened our eyes to see a lot of opportunities. even though there are negatives that still exist out there. But if we position ourselves, transform our business models, look at inclusion, gender, because let's not forget gender. We speak about climate, the inclusion of both women and men in Jamaica and in the Caribbean. Sometimes in certain situations, we realize that the boys need the support, but in others, we still have this gender disparity at the very top and the very lower levels of our society, where women need also to have those support, because we are not necessarily as yet in the boardrooms for women. Yes, we have probably the highest percentage of women managers, but we still need that bridge of integration and inclusion of gender, climate, to take advantage of the opportunities that exist.
Okay, thank you, Terry. And how about you, Raquel? What advice will you give to entrepreneurs and professionals looking to navigate the post-pandemic era?
Yeah, to
The lack
piggyback
of-
on what Terry-Ann was saying, is it's about the perspective, right? I mean, there were so many services that were supposedly couldn't go digital, couldn't go online prior to the pandemic. There were so many things that, we didn't have grocery store delivery, we didn't have food delivery on a large scale going into the pandemic. And now on the other side of it, all of these things out of necessity transform themselves. And so now what we need to do is to stop perceiving fake barriers, because many of these barriers do not in fact exist outside of our own minds, and to really look at the opportunities, especially in tourism, which is sort of our core. How do we digitize more of tourism? How do we, as Jeremy was saying, look more at ecotourism, because that's the direction that it's taking. And that this tourism, again, is one of those things that we have an opportunity to lead on, because it's such a large part of our economy. It's something that we can lead on, and we need to think about what are the ways that we can transform this sector and then have others follow us. And then lastly, I would say that when we look at things like energy, I think, we have a huge opportunity in green hydrogen. And a lot of people don't understand what green hydrogen is or how it can transform the region's economy. And I think educating yourself about the trends and looking at not where things are today, but where are they headed, and what opportunities could that provide for me, either in my entrepreneurship journey or in my business, to be more innovative so that I can lead rather than follow when the opportunity has already been taken.
Thank you so much. I like the synergies between all your submissions, where Jeremy talks about connectivity and then how to leverage that within to move forward, and also how Terry-Ann mentioned about upscaling the workforce as well. And you just highlighted the need to adjust with eco tourism, and also looking at how the energy can be used within this industry. It also links back to the next question, which is the pandemic brought about a lot of remote work, and a lot of the whole world went remote practically. And the world is moving towards that phase now, where we have a lot of, because we've experienced that it's an easier way of doing things. We are seeing that in various industries. What do you think, or as the world is moving forward, what do you think people who are more focused on remote work, and how well do you think it can be adapted within the tourism sector? Raquel, you can start.
Certainly. I think it's less about remote work for me, and it's more about reimagining business. So it is about thinking through, the pandemic forced all of us to reprioritize our lives and to look through a different lens as it related to what was important, what we were willing to do, what we were not willing to do. And people came out with a different set of priorities. So we now have to reimagine. Some people are more wanting to be more connected now on the other side because they were isolated in their homes. And others now want more flexibility because of the remote nature and the opportunities that presented. And I think for whether you're providing a tourism service or you're a practitioner within that service, you now have to reimagine and think about what's practical given what I'm doing. If you're working in a hotel, you can't clean the hotel from your house. But There are other things that could be delivered remotely. There are other experiences that can be delivered remotely. But it's also about understanding that the pandemic taught us a bit of feast and famine, right? Like many hotels are recovering, but they haven't fully recovered from the time that they were closed. But understanding that this opportunity that this presents right now gives you a chance to, yes, to recover, but if it continues, and we hope that it does, to also invest in your future and future-proof your organization and future-proof your business, so that you're building upon the momentum that this sort of change in scope created.
Thank you, Raquel. Terian?
I think Raquel said it perfectly. Let's not look at remote work as a trend, a fad. Everyone is doing it, so we have to do it. Let's relook at our business and see what needs to be done. This is around cost efficiency, because you can save money in relooking at your processes and your policies and how you deliver service. So if you have front facing positions or roles, then yes, you will have to, more than likely, as Raquel said, if you have to clean a room, you have to be there. But they are very likely across the tourism sector, there are positions that are very similar to those of any private sector organization. Your accounting team doesn't need to come to the office every day. So really look at how you operate as a business and then determine what best suits the business operation from efficiency, customer service, and profitability, because that's what businesses are there for. And then determine, does remote work for me? And if you're moving to remote work, and I know a lot of companies are still opposed to remote work, because some people do like to face-to-face supervision and sitting over someone's shoulder. But then we may need to relook at how we measure success and how we track performances, and change activity-based roles into more result-based roles. So then you can monitor by results instead of activities where you need to be sitting over someone's shoulder and making sure that they're doing their 8 hours. So this is my take on it that supports Raquel's.
Thank you. Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I can't add too much to what Raquel and Terry Ann mentioned. I guess, I mean, I agree completely. Like, we have these trends, and I feel like the media or whomever like makes it sound like the entire world is going to remote work. Well, that's not true. In the tourism sector, there's going to be hybrid. Like, it's already been said, like some workers are going to have to be in their roles physically, others won't. But I think there's a third category that relates to remote work, which is opportunities. So for example, to Terry Ann's example about Jamaica and Kingston, I'm the type of visitor that like, I want to go to those local businesses in Kingston. Like, I want to go to the cool restaurant or the cool gallery or the cool neighborhood, but I don't want a tour, right? So like, I would love to have a digital concierge who literally can be sitting in his or her apartment, home, wherever, in Jamaica, in St. Lucia, like, and I can tap into as a service that I pay for as part of my accommodations to be my digital concierge. So like, hey, we're going to Kingston this afternoon. Where's a great place for lunch? Where's a great place for an art gallery? What's a cool business? Like, I work in green tech or green economy. I'm interested in maybe like meeting a local entrepreneur. That would be cool. And that's like a value add that I think people would pay for. It would support remote work, but it's not like problematic, it's not like somehow destroying or diminishing a business model. Rather, it's enhancing, it's evolving, it's adding new possibilities to older business models. So I think that's the kind of thinking that we need, is instead of either or, it's kind of like what Terry Ann was saying, like, how do we maybe rethink a little bit, like what the metrics are and just what the business models are, and then work this digital remote opportunity into that in ways that are appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Again, we see the synergies between your submissions here, where Raquel talked about reimagining and seeing what is applicable within your sector as well. Terian also mentioned reviewing your work to see what needs to be done and reviewing your methods so that you can optimize the situation that you have. And Jeremy just talked about looking at new opportunities and how to leverage, seeing it as a new opportunity to leverage certain aspects of the businesses. To the next question, I want to find out what are some of the challenges that you foresee in this new era and how do you think they can be solved? I'll start with Terian.
Okay, as a development organization, IDB is focused on these challenges, identifying them and solving them. And I know I'm touching Raquel's point, but at the top of it, the challenge is climate change. This is a big challenge. So I won't go into it much because I know that's Raquel's focus. And I know she will touch on that. But I also think the inclusion of innovation and technology, that becomes a challenge. Let me tell you from the perspective. So we have startups that are great and are providing solutions that are unique. But there are times when they approach their first buyers, corporates, and they have no idea what these technologies are. They don't understand how to apply them to their business. And it really takes a lot for them to transition from one technology to the other. This becomes a big stumbling block for entrepreneurs who need that first level of support. When an entrepreneur bring blockchain to a corporate, he has no clue sometimes what they're talking about or how it can digitize, transform their business, how to digitize your whole KYC process so that you can now use your mobile phone and you don't have to go into the bank and bring in 5-10 different exaggeration, sorry, different documents to support this opening, but just digitizing the process to assist with it. So this becomes a problem. And I think another big problem is around talent. We realize that every day when I look at the job advertisement, there are needs for software developers, IT personnel, and constantly there is this need for, let's say, the 21st century skills. And we don't have the talent right now to meet the demand for these skills that are being demanded by the software and technology businesses. So I think those I would put as my top three. And final cross-cutting, gender, because I have to mention gender, and inclusion, because we can't have a world that is moving forward and developing without including our most vulnerable in society. We need solutions that include them into what is happening. So I will stop right here.
All right. Thank you, Terian. Jeremy, what challenges do you foresee and how do you think they can be solved?
I mean, I see two main challenges. This is globally, and it certainly applies to Caribbean island nations. The first is education. So we have a gap now between the rate at which, and this is speaking to climate change, green economy, and really training the next generation to have the background, to have the knowledge base, to create, to be entrepreneurial, to innovate. It's making major progress. I mean, when I interview or talk to people around the world today that are 10 or 15 years younger than me, I'm so impressed how this conversation, this vocabulary is like a part of how they think about things. They think about the world in terms of these topics that we're talking about today. But we always have to be ahead of the curve, and particularly in the Caribbean, there has to be that early stage instruction around these topics. So that's number one. And then number two is scalability, right? So Caribbean island nations are by definition smaller populations, they're smaller markets, but they're also extremely vital markets around some of the solutions. that we need related to climate change. So the question becomes like, how do you make the link between some of the local solutions that may be incubating in the Caribbean region to broader global markets? As Terry Ann pointed to, how do you almost like have translators and have support and have like mechanisms through which that local innovation and kernels of new ideas, many of which have been proven perhaps in local Caribbean contexts, can find broader markets and the capital and support to scale them. I don't know really how to do that. I know that there's all kinds of initiatives that are blossoming around this. I see it a lot. I've been working a lot with Pacific nations where there's obviously very different circumstances on the ground, but some of the issues are similar around scalability of entrepreneurship and innovation. And so there are some solutions there, but I would say those two things, and just continuing as leaders in this space to communicate and like educate about like what our approaches. So for example, with education, how can educators have knowledge sharing with other universities abroad that might have very well developed programs around environmental sciences or environmental entrepreneurship?
All right. Thank you, Jeremy. Raquel, finally.
Listen to me, Daniel, I'm not even answering that question. There are no challenges, there are opportunities. Let's stop talking about the barriers, there are opportunities.
Amen.
We are the land of Usain Bolt, Rihanna, Shelley-Ann Fraser. You know, we don't have Mia Motley. We don't have challenges, we have chances, we have opportunities, we have all of these things that we have the ability to do and just need to do it. So things like, you know, we have small land masses, but we have huge ocean spaces. We need to be looking at the blue economy to determine what can we do in the ocean space to take advantage of what is available to us. We have phenomenal women, and not just Terry Ann, who is with us right now. So we need to be looking at more women in leadership, and how do we continue to grow that diversity, which we know, as we heard the opening speakers talk about. She talked about you know, gender diversity and all of the things that provides opportunities for us to do. We need to think bigger. When we think about starting these businesses, we cannot just think about starting this business. And again, going back to Jamaica, which best years of my life, by the way, we're not just thinking about Clarendon. We're thinking about not just the whole of Jamaica, but we're thinking about the whole of the region. And we're thinking about the whole of the globe. The world is getting smaller and smaller. And this is a great chance for us to think about how do we access markets that we haven't operationalized. We have free trade agreements with Europe and Canada that we are still trying to operationalize. So products are coming in and not enough is going out. And there's so many opportunities. And back to Jeremy's point, which I think was an excellent one, about learning about how these deals are structured and learning about funding. And that is a huge opportunity for us. We're seeing a lot of a disconnect in terms of the kind of funding that entrepreneurs are going after and the kind of funding that is available. And we need to educate ourselves on what we should be going after and how do we structure a deal so that we can actually get investors. We need to learn from each other. We absolutely need to be learning from each other because there's so much going on in individual islands, and we're all different centers of excellence for different things. And we need to be learning from, wait, what is Trinidad doing? What's Grenada doing? What's Barbados doing? What's Bahamas doing? What's St. Vincent doing? What's St. Lucia doing? Because we can learn so much from each other, but we're just, you know, we're close, but we're far, and we are living in these silos. So, you know, I'm thinking about how do we motivate employees, because the whole game has changed. The winners of the future are going to be the ones who can keep people motivated and passionate and driven, because people aren't going to do just anything anymore. You have to be fulfilled. You have to feel like you're working with purpose. And back to something that Terry Ann brought up, you have to feel like you're working in a circular and regenerative way, because we understand that the stakes are high as it relates to climate. But we are Caribbean people, and we need to never, ever forget that.
Thank you so much. That's a really great way to close out this panel. But I would also ask for any final remarks, probably share any exciting things that are happening in your organizations as well. So I'll start with you, Raquel, then.
I encourage anyone who has a really great climate smart project to fill out the form on our website, caribbeanaccelerator.org, and we can help connect you with either investors or other entrepreneurs to build your team out, or with sources of funding. So we really want to hear about the projects. We are nominators for Earthshot, and that's a £1 million prize by Prince William. So there's a lot that we want to connect entrepreneurs with, but we also want to help them to partner them with resources so that they have the ability to take their business to the next level.
Okay. Jeremy, last words and anything exciting happening?
Yeah, well, what's exciting for me, so this project I'm working on in the Pacific, I created something called the Global Green Economy Index, which I encourage everyone to check out. We cover most of the OESC countries, and we're building a customized bespoke sustainability measurement model for the Pacific Islands, and I want to do that in the Caribbean. Because so much of what I hear today and what I've heard about in the Caribbean is that there's so much potential around sustainability and around entrepreneurship in the green economy. But we could benefit from having a dashboard, from having a bespoke green economy measurement framework that brings all of the island nations around the key issues that are most important for the region. And those issues can be green economy topics, they can be blue economy topics, as Raquel mentioned. They can be topics related to social equity. That's a big piece of our green economy index, whether it has to do with income or gender. And it can have to do with more traditional business topics related to innovation, entrepreneurship. So I have a goal to make that happen sometime soon. And I would love to hear from organizations or individuals that have ideas on how we could put that together, because I think that could be a good foundation to get everyone on the same page around these topics and to really promote progress.
Okay. Terry-Ann, would you wrap this up nicely for us?
So let me just say, it's always exciting with IDB Lab because the projects that we look at are super innovative and they're actually meeting a development need. So I don't want to identify any one because then I'll feel like I'm leaving out all the others. But I would just say, as a reach, is that IDB Lab looks for innovative solutions that targets vulnerable communities and for impact, transformational impact. So if you have a proven business model, you are looking for funding for investments, then feel free, reach out to IDB Lab. We have a representative in 6 of the Caribbean countries: Trinidad, Bahamas, Barbados, Jamaica, Suriname, and Guyana. We also have Haiti, we cluster it differently, and Belize, which we adopt as our sister. So feel free to reach out to any one of our representatives in the countries, and we can have a conversation on how we can collaborate and look at opportunities.
All right. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been an exciting discussion so far. I'm really glad you could join us today for the Caribbean Future Summit. And thank you for your thought leadership and your insights as well. I know I'm your standing moderator. Anselina had issues, so I had to quickly step in and take over. I hope I did a good job. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Terry-Ann, Raquel, and Jeremy. We are really glad you could join us today.
Thank you, Stanil. You did an excellent job.
Thank you all. It was a
Thank
great
you.
discussion.
Okay, that was the Sustainable Ecosystem Development panel, and we just wrapped that up nicely. We'll quickly transition to the next panel after a short break. 30 seconds break, we'll transition to the next panel, which is on the Caribbean career perspective and the investment ecosystem of the future. That panel comes right up in the next 30 seconds. Okay. To kickstart this panel, we have Misbah, who is a financial analyst at Global Startup Ecosystem, who would lead the discussion on the Caribbean career perspective and the investment ecosystem of the future. Welcome, Misbah.
Thank you, Stan, for the warm welcome. My name is Misbah Abdallah. I'm a financial analyst and content manager at the Global Startup Ecosystem. I'm so happy to moderate this session. Our theme for the session is the Caribbean career perspective and the investment ecosystem of the future. To help me with this discussion, we have Keisha and Elise. Welcome, and it's an honor for you to join and for me to join you on this panel. Let's start right away. I would like you to introduce yourself and share with me about your background and how it connects you with what you do now. Let's begin with Keisha.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited and really enjoyed the first panel, such a lively discussion. So my name is Keisha Farnham. I'm the Director for Public Sector Projects with the CCSA, the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator. My background is in development for the last 19 years. I think my truly regional experience would have started as a program manager with the Australian Agency for International Development, where I would have managed a suite of projects across 14 countries in a range of development sectoral themes. And then through my combined experience with AUSAID, Global Affairs Canada, the IDB, and now with CCSA, I've worked across 28 Caribbean countries. I think my climate change as a label for me would have started like about 5 years ago with my role as managing director for Walker's Institute for Regenerative Research, Education and Design. And it really just kind of cemented all the work that I had been doing, all my project management experience, because really climate change is at the intersection of all of the sectoral areas. And talking about the intersectionality of climate change as it relates to tourism, when I thought about this, it really, for me, I could describe it as this spider web that links all other sectors. So the blue economy, agriculture, energy sector, and I think the previous panel really hit on that. And the interaction between climate change and tourism is also not a unidirectional or a linear interaction. When we look at tourism, tourism is one of the biggest economic drivers for the majority of the region. And while as a region, we are minor contributors to the global greenhouse gas emissions, we are one of the regions most affected by the impacts of climate change. And it is very costly for us, right? So, economic analysis that has looked at the areas of, increased hurricane damage, loss of tourism revenue, and infrastructure damages have shown that the cost to the region could be up to US 10.7 billion by 2025, right? And that is more than the combined GDP of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean State members alone. Then on the other hand, when you look at the impacts of tourism on climate change, fossil fuel consumption is a major driver for climate change. And all the amenities that are needed to create and keep a viable tourism industry, we look at the region that's spending over US 37 billion of our foreign exchange earnings. And this, of course, further reduces our potential for economic growth. So looking at employing forms of renewable energy would not only tackle two problems, climate change, but also economic competitiveness within the tourism industry. And then when we look at, let's say, the use of plastic. So according to the One Planet Network, 80% of tourism is in coastal areas. And that generates around 8 million tons of plastic in the ocean each year. And then 40%, you usually see a 40% increase on that during tourism season. So that intersectionality between climate change and tourism is undeniable. And definitely, as we go along in the conversation, we'll talk a little more about sustainable tourism and how that could be addressed. We definitely need to watch those interactions. And then to touch on the tech aspect very briefly, innovation has its role to play both within the tourism industry, but innovation is not just only about technology, it's also about new ways of thinking and doing and acting. And so innovation, framed within the technology space is that access to latest technologies through solution providers, but also the activation of indigenous technologies within the region that would allow us to leapfrog as a region to the forefront of climate action.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, over to you, Elise. Kindly introduce yourself and give us a brief information about your background and how it connects to what you do.
Absolutely. Lovely to be here this morning and, sharing this panel with esteemed colleagues. And the discussion this morning so far has been really, really thought-provoking and very inspiring, I must say. So I am the program manager for WIRED, and WIRED is the acronym for the Walkers Institute for Regenerative Research, Education and Design. So WIRED manages the largest regeneration project in the region, where we are taking 277 acres of mined lands and we've transformed that into a nature reserve on the east coast of Barbados. So just like, our name says, we're looking at education, we're looking at data collection as an institute, we're looking at regeneration, which is obviously the heart of our program. And then we're also looking at community outreach and development of people in this space. So, we have a lot of fun doing the work that we do. It is very hard work. And it is a lot about culture change as well. Transformation was a word that came up a lot this morning. And we deal with that on a daily basis when it comes to the ecology of the space, but also how we're learning about things that are happening from a day-to-day perspective and how those things can be scaled up and applied to different scenarios across the region and in other places in the world. So when we look at regeneration and then we're aligning that to tourism, particularly the way that we approach that in the region, it has been very exciting for us to explore ways of looking at regenerative tourism. So people want to come to Barbados, they want to come to spaces like this, and they want to leave these spaces better than they found them. And we have several opportunities for people to engage not only in our projects, but in the work of partners that are housed at Walkers Reserve, but also are in spaces across the nation. So the work is very rewarding. And, it's very encouraging to see people taking up this message, the momentum building behind the work that we do, and seeing how perspectives are shifting around how we are to approach tourism and how we make the idea of tourism regenerative.
That's lovely, wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing your background and letting us know more about you. All right, let's dive straight into the discussion. So, Keisha, can you share any projects that the CCSA is doing to empower Caribbean professionals and entrepreneurs?
Well, as an organization, and Raka would have touched on some of this in her presentation, but as an organization, we're working towards becoming the global standard for collaborative action to achieve sustainable climate smart results for the region. And so what we want for the region is to become the world's first climate smart zone. And how that happens is through the strengthening of the region's readiness and response to disasters, as well as driving the transformation of our economy and fast-tracking sound public and private investment opportunities. And this is a very ambitious goal, but we are, if nothing else, we view the world and the region through the lens of opportunity. And so for us, most of our work is how do we bring partners together, whether that's public or private sector partners, in a way that allows us to really catalyze this type of transformation in the region. So we work primarily in matchmaking. So in matchmaking investors and projects, so connecting investors and donors, businesses, key government leaders, etc. We are constantly identifying and packaging a pipeline of opportunities, and we're aggregating projects across sectors and geographies. So we're across 28 Caribbean countries. And because of our size, really a lot of projects, and particularly to gain the interest of investors, being able to aggregate projects across geographies not only maximizes impact, but actually makes it more attractive to investors. In terms of creating economies of scale as well, we try to make sure that we look at bringing the best investment practice to the table when it comes to amalgamating similar solutions. And then we also work in the area of blended financial instruments. So using philanthropy to unlock investment potential and bring new capital to the region. And in that regard, we work with the multilateral development banks, the development agencies, but also with private capital. And then, of course, I had mentioned innovation earlier. So we look at how we can help the region access latest technologies, either through relationships with solution providers or by catalyzing indigenous innovation and technology that is born in the region to solve problems of the region. And then lastly, we work within the area of raising the climate gender awareness. In a lot of these conferences, we're speaking to the choir, right? So, we feel like, okay, our message is being heard, but for a lot of persons, they are outside of this discussion, outside of this conversation. And so kind of raising this awareness and how it impacts their daily lives and how it impacts their opportunities for the future is really, really important in terms of getting that message out. I would say one concrete way that we do this matchmaking, and I'll just use this one example, even though there are many others, is the Investor Forum. So coming out of COP in Glasgow last year, which would have been COP26, we really saw the opportunity to engage investors, donors, and philanthropists from outside the region. And we would have hosted our first Investor Forum in December 2021. And we would have featured at that Investor Forum $10.5 billion in projects alongside a diverse panel of high-level impact investors. And since then, we've had two virtual events, one featuring OECS projects, so Organization of Eastern Caribbean State projects, and another just completed in September, and that focused on the blue economy. And then for this year, we'll be hosting one in person live at COP as well in Egypt. And the aim of this event is not only just pairing investors with investment ready projects, but there's also a measure of education that's happening too as well, not only for the project holders in terms of understanding what investors are looking for, but also in terms of climatizing investors as to what is the opportunities in the Caribbean, what is the Caribbean investment climate. And then, of course, there is that natural networking that happens out of that too as well. So introducing regional leaders to potential investors and helping to lay that platform for establishing and leveraging relationships in order to be able to facilitate the climate resilient investment activity. And so that's one of our major activities. And there's an ongoing process of vetting projects. And again, Raquel would have invited persons, and I would do the same, to go to our website and log into our portal and submit your projects there for matching with investment.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thanks so much for sharing, and I can't wait for the next investor forum. Now, moving on to Elise, I'm also curious about some of the programs and initiatives being carried out at WIDE. Can you share some with us?
Absolutely. So one of our flagship initiatives is what we call the One Tree for Every Bajan program. So as I mentioned, we manage the regeneration project at Walker's Reserve. And if you think about this space that was, basically a desert, it was a sand quarry, and having to really make that into a vibrant space that could support, ecologies, habitats, a whole range of activities from a tourism perspective, there was a lot of work that had to be done to stabilize the soil, to add nutrients to the soil, and then bring, these ecosystems back to a space where they could support life. So we have done a lot of replanting in this space, and the One Tree for Every Bajan program has really been able to bring people to the understanding of how we offset our carbon footprints, but also how we, we like to say, put the right plants in the right place at the right time. So we're not just planting trees, but there's a variety of different types of grasses, shrubs that we would put in that would be amenable to the environment at the reserve, that we're also showing people, if you are, along the coastline, there are particular plants that you can use to really use these nature-based solutions to solve the issues of, desertification and the impacts of climate change on different levels. So that is really one of the programs where we've seen a lot of engagement across various sectors and on all different levels, from individuals to corporate entities to developmental organizations, because people understand very directly the importance of putting trees in the ground. We also have done a lot of work when it comes to supporting the local environment for entrepreneurship. So we've started what we call our eco market at the reserve, which really provides a space for local entrepreneurs, and this is community-based persons to come to the reserve and sell and display what they are producing locally. And it's very important for us to showcase the quality products that people are producing on island, to show people that we can really be enhancing these circular economies, where what we are harvesting from the land, we're able to process on different levels and then create products that go back into our markets and go back into our own hands as Caribbean people. So those are two initiatives, activities that really are forerunners for us. We do a lot of data collection, work with universities and different academic institutions, because it's important for us to be able to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So, the activities that we have ongoing at the reserve, we're able to show how this is actually making an impact when it comes to building up the climate resiliency, not only for Barbados, but for the region. There are lots of other opportunities for people to come in and volunteer with us, intern with us, build up their level of knowledge around, the impacts of climate change and the solutions that we can generate within the Caribbean to advocate for, solutions to this crisis that we're all facing. And, we've seen a lot of forward movement, that building of momentum behind a lot of these solutions, because people are coming to the reserve and having first-hand experiences of what these, can look like and what they can do when it comes to mitigating the effects of climate change.
That's so amazing. That's so amazing. I couldn't have said it any much better. And to reiterate what Raquel from the previous panel shared, there are no challenges. There are only opportunities.
Only opportunities, yes.
Yeah. And Kate,
Are we frozen?
is fostering partnerships like the Investor Forum. So I would like to also hear your thoughts about what you see as the investment opportunities that are yet untapped and that are available in the industry. Let's begin with you, Keisha.
This space is so broad and so wide, particularly because of the intersectionality of tourism with so many other sectors. I mean, when you think about sustainable tourism, I Walker's Reserve is definitely, here in Barbados, one of those projects that has such a circular economy approach that it is really just kind of like a best practice beacon, to be quite honest. But tourism, sustainable tourism, it doesn't only generate economic wealth. There's an environmental side to it. There's a social impact side to it. And so, for example, going back to that same example about the plastics, so tourism companies and destinations being willing to commit to eliminating plastic items could just be part of that step, right? In terms of that intersectionality between tourism and climate change and reducing plastic use. They can innovate, make sure that, the plastics are either safely reused, recycled, composted, and circulate everything that they use to keep it in the economy and out of the environment. And one of the projects that we're working on at the CCSA that I'm really, really excited about actually has the perfect use for that type of plastic. And so in collaboration with CRDC Global, CCSA would have entered into MOU earlier this year with this organization for the establishment of a Resonate plant. And basically what Resonate is that it takes all plastic. So what's considered dirty plastic, not just PET, which will be like your soft drink bottles and that kind of stuff, but it takes all kind of plastics, the kind of plastics that I know Elise and her team have cleaned off the beach at Walker's and collected like 3-4 skips of plastic, that type of plastic. And it turns it into a resin that can then be put into concrete that makes the concrete not only absorb more carbon from the atmosphere, but also makes it stronger, more flood resistant, etc. So it's the perfect circular economy approach. You know, it's a perfect example of doing good and doing well. And so we're working with you know, organizations that are already collecting plastic within the region. And organizations that are within the manufacturing sector, or companies that are in the manufacturing sector. And in cases where there is no collection program, we're looking at implementing a collection program called the Bag That Builds. And, you know, we're really, really excited about this project. We would have attended the launch in Costa Rica and really seen this equipment at work, seen what was done. And you know, interestingly, as part of that experience, we actually did a river cleanup first. And then the stuff that we got from the river cleanup is what we put into the machine, and we saw it work firsthand. And really, you know, these types of partnerships, and I mean, Liz also alluded to it, that whole partnership of private sector, public sector, the communities, really working together to solve a solution. It's very evident in this project. I would also say, actually, you know what? I'll save some of this for the end because it's so much, and I'll let Elise go ahead and answer this question.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So, Elise, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Keisha. So when it comes to investment opportunities, I mean, first of all, we use the word engagement a lot, engagement and partnership and collaboration. So I would have mentioned, you know, there are lots of different initiatives that we hold space for at Walker's Reserve. I mean, the space itself, the physical space is quite large. And because of the nature of the project, we have a lot of NGOs, community groups, you know, school groups. You have like the Cub Scouts and things like that. You have people coming from different universities at home and abroad who want to come in and have some kind of experience on site. And the range of experiences is quite large. From the beach cleanups that, you know, Keisha would have mentioned, to data collection, which doesn't sound exciting, but it really is, given the, you know, the space that we're in, people doing things at nighttime, early in the morning, in the heat of the day. And then you have that connection between all these various stakeholders, the kinds of conversations that I've seen happen between people and the light bulbs that go off because of that sharing of information. I think is something that is really special and something that we always want to keep as a main part, a main component of the project when it comes to connection and collaboration. So when it comes to investment, you know, we really encourage groups to be able to come and again experience the space firsthand, but also look at the work that we're doing and see how they can get involved. So that not only means, you know, coming and visiting us physically, but sharing information about the work that we're doing, connecting us to people in this space, you know, both at home and abroad. All of those, you know, investments have been very valuable to the growth of the project and what we've been able to do as an organization. So, you know, we have partners, stakeholders all around the world, just based on something they may have seen on social media or something they may have seen a partner share. So I always say, you know, collaboration is the new currency, where yes, we're looking at getting that financial investment because we need it. We need that for the regeneration and the sustainability of the project. But there are other ways that people can contribute, and there are other ways that people can help this project move forward, and projects like ours, because we're not the only one in the region. We may be the largest, but there are several people trying to do things that are positive, that are going to move us forward when it comes to climate change agendas. And really from a public awareness standpoint, we really have to have a cohesive voice, because that is really what is going to make an impact.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you so much for this awesome insight that you are sharing, especially regarding the opportunities that are still available for individuals, entrepreneurs, project managers, and all the ecosystem combined. And still, I still want to know about some of the opportunities, either in person and virtual, that someone or a person can enroll immediately after this session. So any either in person or virtual, can you share any of these opportunities to us?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So going back to the One Tree for Every region, we've had conversations very recently, which are ongoing conversations with BTMI Europe, for example, and just, sharing one of our partnership opportunities where they have an initiative called Mindful Travel. And going back to that idea of regenerative tourism, people want to come and visit a space. Yes, they're enjoying the beach, they're enjoying food, but what kind of give back is there involved in their visit to this space? So, we offer the opportunity for people to come and have a tour, but then you can add a planting a tree to that tour. Or you can donate to, our restoration of the wetlands in the areas that we manage. So there's a very direct opportunity for people from a tourism standpoint to give back to the project. Walker's Reserve is also located in the Scotland district on the East Coast, and that is part of the national park system. So we're encouraging people to get out there, get into nature, have fun in nature. And we've just been through the pandemic where this wasn't available for young people, for children, for all of us. And we have seen, the benefits of people coming back into the space and being outdoors and really just being able to breathe and enjoy themselves in outdoor spaces. So I think from, that level of engagement, we do have tree planting, we do have our tours, we do have opportunities to volunteer when we do our beach cleanups, when we do our mangrove conservation activities. Walker's Beach, which is on the east of our property, is one of the more popular nesting sites for leatherback turtles. So there's a lot of work that we do around that as well, where we're raising public awareness, but also physically cleaning up the beach so that, this type of animal that is so important to our ecosystem is able to survive and thrive in our space. So yes, so I would say that we have these, physical engagement opportunities for people to come in and experience the space and give back through various programs. And then, of course, there's the opportunity to donate if you're not able to physically visit, to donate to our various programs on various levels. We have that mechanism available on our website so that you're able to pay, via credit card, etc. But we do love working with groups where we can look at longer term partnership opportunities, which goes across different levels, both from a financial contribution standpoint, but also from understanding, what the organization may be looking to achieve with their own goals, whether it be CSR or otherwise, and how working with Wired can help achieve those goals. So we're actually going to be at the Global Business Week conference over the next 3 days with Tricor, which has been a long-standing business partner for Wired. And, we really look forward to speaking to various people about what we do, how they can get involved, and also how they can connect to some of the organizations that we work with. Because it's not just that we want people to get involved with the work of Wired, but our work really brings on board other people. As I said, collaboration is the new currency, and we really are looking to connect people within this ecosystem on the island and in the region.
Thank you very much. I do wish we had more time to delve into some of these issues. And still, let's quickly move on to the wrap up session. So we will just go around and close with this. What's the one thing you think you and everybody that's here today should be thinking about that maybe we are not thinking about? Yeah, let's start with Keisha.
I think what I would really like individuals to do, because just to tap into that last question about additional investment opportunities, I would have mentioned that we would have just completed our investor forum, and it was focused on the blue economy, and there were a plethora of projects that really tapped into ridge to reef interactions, and looking at how we can sustainably manage environmentally things that are impacting the environment, for example, sargassum seaweed. So there was a project called the Woolly Rock Rose project in Dominican Republic. There was a huge data collection project that would allow for a lot of subsea data collection called Blue Movement. There was a project that looked at a connection to fisheries and tourism and climate smart agriculture. So in terms of having a look at the investment opportunities, I would encourage people to go and have a look on our YouTube channel for that, and to reach out to us if there's any interest in the projects that were presented then and there. But I think what I'm seeing, and I think Wired manifests this, but I'm also seeing this in other really good blue economy projects, is that whole of ecosystem approach to project development. And so if it is that you have a project within the tourism space, really kind of examine how that project impacts, in various areas. So how does this project source its energy? Could you tap into renewable energy resources? Could you make it 100% renewable energy resources, or the majority? How could you look for energy saving efficiency options in the development of that project or your ongoing business? What systems can you change? What innovations in terms of the way that you're thinking, acting, doing? What technologies could you introduce that would allow you to reduce your carbon footprint? But also just look at how those interactions are impacting the community. So for example, I just mentioned the Woolly Rock Rose project, but really that project, it taps into the local fishermen because they're the ones who would be doing the harvesting. It provides livelihood opportunities for the community, and it's part of it's being partly managed by the Punta Cana Group. And the Punta Cana Group is really a very excellent example of how, environmental conservation and seaforestation, among other things, can be incorporated into the tourism experience for the mindful tourist. So I would say, make sure that your projects kind of hit on all of the points. It's a whole of economy approach, and that you're looking at not only how the climate change impacts you, but how you impact climate change.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Keisha. Now, Elise, any final words?
Yeah, just very briefly, because Keisha said it so well. That call to action, I don't think we have the luxury anymore of sitting back and saying somebody else will solve the problems that we are currently facing. We all need to look at, the roles that we are in and how we can find opportunities to make a positive impact when it comes to the environment, but also when it comes to community and culture change. That idea of transformation and looking at this whole systems approach and everything being integrated, I think is very important. So there's no more room for silos. There's no more room for myopic or secular thinking. It really has to be about how are we going to be working together? How can we bring our strengths together? And how do we come up with solutions that are going to be, going to take us well into the future?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Wonderful. This session has been amazing. Thank you so much for the wonderful perspective that you brought here today and sharing time with us in this summit. We are so grateful for the insight that you shared, and I hope to hear from you in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for an amazing panel. Thank you, Ms. Ba, for moderating that. Looking at the investment opportunities and projects available
Hi, Leticia. I think you are muted, but I'm assuming that's my cue, right? I can go now. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Leticia, team? Hello. Looks like everyone can see and hear me. Let me just share my slides, please, if you allow me. Let's go to the next slide. it's not. There you go. So thank you so much for the space today. I'm Camilo Clavijo. I'm the regional director for HubSpot in Latin America. And we're going to talk about shaping the future of the tourism industry. So thank you for having me here, first of all. So when we think about this, what travelers really value now, and we just saw an incredible conversation about examples, tangible examples of what they expect from us. So this is just a list that we took from a source that is disclosed right there. But this is the minimal expectation. So they are looking for hygiene, safety. This is the valuable things like they saw today. Regardless, after the pandemic, we start seeing that word of mouth and the personal experience became more and more important in this industry, of course. And this is really, really interesting. So we can create a delightful, and I want to please keep that word in mind, delight, for the customer experience, how we can delight them. So we did notice as well that customer satisfaction is not enough. They want more. And we're seeing right now that that customer delight is the next big thing that we need to do. And that's the new bar that the market is giving us in the tourism industry. So for that, to give you an example how this looks before, simply just meeting the customer needs, make your customer happy once. Delight is a complete different experience. Exceed their expectations. Sometimes they don't even know what they want, and you're going to be able to provide something that is way beyond their expectations. Also, to solve for your clients, sometimes even at the expense of going against some processes that you may have internally. Also, create a long-term positive relationship. They just don't want to go one time. How you can delight them so they made that spot, your hotel, your hostel, the property that you have, their preferred location, and they can come back and bring more people with them. And basically, you are looking for them to love your brand, love what you offer, and recommend you to their family, to their friends, all over the social network that they may have. But how you can do this using technology. So I want to share a few examples and a few tips. First of all, omni-channel experience. Sometimes customers will prefer to engage over WhatsApp. Sometimes they will prefer to go over a form. Sometimes they will prefer a call. There is no one or the other approach. We need to mix all this and offer an omni-channel experience for all of them. The second one, personalization. I'm unique. I consider myself unique as a customer. I'm also a customer of the tourism industry. And of course, I want a personalized industry, personalized experience as well for me. I do have my family. I expect to be inclusive of what is my expectation from that vacation time that I'm spending there. And at the same time, as I do feel being a customer as well, I want to be treated as people, not as a number. I'm not a reservation number. I want to be treated as Camilo Clavijo with his family on a vacation when they're investing time and money to have a great time. So this is really important that we start listening more often to the customer feedback that they provide. And this is not only to send them like a note, like, thank you for your feedback. Everything is cool, we appreciate it. It's like how you can make experiences with that feedback so that person can become an advocate and recommend you all over. But something really interesting that we just saw from Elise from Wired is connecting. How you can connect better. Be unexpected, be enthusiastic. You want to be the best in connection, not in price, not in experience. We're thinking about connecting. Connection is becoming more and more important in the industry. How you can get to that level and make those decisions, data. Data is becoming the key for all your strategies. Use it to make customer service decisions, but also at the same time, that feedback, all the other pieces that we talk about, document those so you can have a better approach when making those decisions. And you start then building a community. And we saw it, communities around whatever is different. Like, I want to be involved with the community itself that you serve. You are building a double community over there. But at the same time, it's how you can create those experiences to delight, and how that delight can turn into a group of people that share that interest, and you can connect with them in a more strong manner. And at the end of the day, is help your customers succeed. My objective with going probably to an island is having some peace, quiet time. But if you throw to that I have a little 5-year-old and you entertain her for me, that's beyond my expectation. But if at the same time, I know that you're running a green hotel and you have policies against wasting food or plastic, use of plastic, I will be delighted with that experience. That's exactly what I didn't expect probably when I booked that vacation, but that's what I'm getting. And that will change my perception about that place. And probably I will come back. I'm not alone with my family. I will bring the rest of my family, probably my sisters, my brothers, to go and have fun with me. Because you made me realize that you're offering more than what I expected. And at HubSpot, we are a CRM platform. We focus on all the data life of a customer from prospect until you are working on that negotiation. And last piece, of course, when you want to offer that delight, that customer service experience that they want to have. So that's what we do here at HubSpot. And we see like customer management is not the word that we want to use or the terms or the phrase that we want to use. We want to change this. We definitely look at the challenge that the market is giving us as a customer connection. So this is not about filling up databases for the sake of sending emails, for the sake of sending communications. This is about getting that data and creating customer connections that are powerful and long time and give you value at the same time. What do we think about it? So basically, let's take the tourism industry to the next level, and we want to be together with all of you. So we're here just to remind you that there is a better way of doing it based on data, and you can create this delightful experience for all your customers. But I want to leave you with these two resources. So first of all, our community. As I mentioned, there is community, and that should be one of your main goals, to create communities for your connected customers. We also do that. This is our community. You will see a way to connect with other fellows in the tourism industry in Latin America, across the Caribbean as well. When you can ask questions, you can understand like who else is using tools to manage the data, who else is doing strategies, and what are they doing. But at the same time, we want to be mindful that there is a gap in the Caribbean and as well in Latin America. So we created resources that are free resources for you to learn. And this is not to learn about the product. This is not to learn about HubSpot. We do have that, of course, but at the same time, we have trainings on what digital marketing is, how to better advertise on social networks, sales skills that you may need. All of this has been created in language. So we have it in English, Spanish, Portuguese, French as well, for you to have it. Certify yourself, share with your teams. That way, we're also creating with the Academy a delightful experience for you to then become part of our community. And that was all for today. We only have 10 minutes and I want to be on time. Thank you, Leticia. Thank you to all the team for the invitation. Delighted.
Thank you
to be
very
here.
much.
And thank you for that delightful experience as well.
Thank you, Camilo. Thank you for coming on, and we are really delighted to have you. Thank you. Have a lovely day.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so Camilo is currently leading the HubSpot expansion through Latin America as the Senior Sales Director and Country Manager. It was really a pleasure having you on, and without much ado, I'm just going to introduce the next speaker, Dr. Paloma Mohamed Martin, the first female Vice Chancellor of University of Guyana. Welcome, Dr. Paloma. We are happy to have you.
Thank you very much. Can you see me?
Yes, we are ready to go.
I'm sharing my screen. Are you seeing my slides? Great. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much for having me this afternoon. I would have indicated and confessed that when you asked me, I was really concerned about what I could actually add to a conversation about tourism and technology. And so in preparing for this conversation, I decided to work on the actual question of thinking about the future and futures thinking, because I came across in my reading around this matter a document that was just released by UNESCO, and that is the Future We Want report that just came out a couple of weeks ago, in which young people of the planet are indicating that they want to really actually learn about futurist thinking. So I thought I would basically go through this very quickly and really look at how this might actually impact on our what we're talking about today and what we decide to do about it. So one of the things that we will consider is that the future is not necessarily predictable. It's not predetermined, and the outcomes are definitely influenced by what choices we make today. And that there are several futures that we could actually consider. And so those are probable futures, futures that are really far out, way beyond, well, basically anything that we could imagine. Plausible futures, things that we think we could achieve, which is basically where the realm of where the conversation has been this morning, mostly with a lot of beautiful examples and data about where we are and how we could possibly get to the future that we want. Possible futures, a lot closer, and then the preferable futures, which is where most people like to go, what it is. So this is the document, part of the document I was talking about, in which the young people of the world had several recommendations. I'm just going to focus on this one. It's a short time. And they said that they're seeing futures that they share, that are similar, if not the same, and the challenges are the same, and that higher education should provide opportunities in and out of the classroom to ensure and encourage youths forward-thinking skills. In this way, higher education can help detach youths from being unlocked in current. Basically, you've just blocked my screen by putting up that thing in the bottom. I can't see it. Okay. So thank you. So I'm just going to go back so I could read the bottom. Yes. So so that we can they can avoid being locked into current societal frameworks, and in doing so also we can seek to transform higher education. So I also looked at this data from the Caribbean, and if you notice, all of these are areas in which are included in the curricula of higher education. And you notice across here that there is nothing about futures thinking at all. There's nothing in our curricula about strategic thinking, and certainly nothing about my pet point about what is actualization and how we actualize what we think about. And I think that this is one of the ways in which we could really move forward and include a conversation. So I'm not sure why this is happening. This is happening in your in the transfer, but I'm thinking about the future as a continuous now. Many years ago, when I was an undergrad, I wouldn't tell you how many years ago that was, I came across this Heraclitus, who I did my own work on as a change specialist. And he basically made the statement, and of course a long exposition about it, which I won't go into today, that a person cannot step into the same river twice. And basically he was talking about change. And so I think about change as a continuous now. And more than challenging the perspective that the future is in the future, like tomorrow, in the next minute. If we think of the future as a continuous now, there's several implications for thinking like that. And one is that there are multiple co-created and concurrent possibilities at any point in time. So there's no one single future that we can envisage. Second, there is a non-random reactivity to the visible and non-visible stimuli or determinants. So there are things that affect us that we don't see, things that we see, things that we perceive, things that we don't perceive because of the level at which they're operating at. But science and technology are now helping us to kind of look into those those realms which have been in the past not so easy for us to see. So things like nanotechnology and so on, we're now able to see how small microsystems and nanosystems actually affect health, affects life, affects everything else. And if we think of the future as a continuous now, then all of the choices and imperatives we have become very, very, very important. And so that our inaction or action impacts everything that we do, right? So that's just a theoretical kind of outlook. So for me, a lot of the conversation that's happening now about inclusion, about equity, really is, to my mind, about actualization and about considering all of these possibilities for the future and futures that we could have in the Caribbean. The first time I spoke about this idea of actualization science, somebody said to me, but everybody can't actualize what they want to do. And I'd say to the contrary, they can and they should. If we are not able to do that, that's when we have inequity, and then we have real inequity and exclusion. So we must have a real commitment to helping people to actualize whatever it is that they really, really, really want to do, and what their possibilities are, what their talents are, and what their gifts are, out of any kind of background and condition that they find themselves in. But here is where I'd like to focus the next few minutes. So I wonder if we're thinking about the future of education or education for the future of the Caribbean. Very different perspectives if you really consider what those might be. And here are 6 just areas that we might want to consider moving forward when we think about how we educate people in the Caribbean, and not only at the highest level at the universities, but also how we educate people all the way from the home, all the way through media, all the way through school system to other systems of education. So first of all, in this region, we have a very young population, very, very young, and it's a declining population. So this is a something that I'd like to pick up on. Somebody spoke about this earlier today, about that we don't have people. So we are going to be having more problems finding people if this trend continues. But of course, we do have the question of people coming back to the region if it's attractive. Also, people in the diaspora from all our countries to do that. But the education that young people are saying they want is not that we're delivering. They want a designer, an education that could really actually help them to put together these jobs or these projects that they foresee could be something they want to do, or a problem they want to tackle in the future. That are projects now in education, higher education. The way our programs are designed generally does not actually allow this much flexibility. And so this is one of the things we have to think about. We have to consider that they might be connected to the region or disconnected to the region, depending on where they are and what we're doing, because now you have a global world that's wired and that is actually connected to everyone everywhere. And that the young person in the region who will be our workforce for the future, or maybe consider themselves not to be in the business of being forced to work, but actually to actualize themselves by finding and focusing on something that they want to do, which we would consider to be their work or their vocation. Very different thing. And part of this has to do with, focusing and finding talent very early. I'm not sure that we actually do this well in the Caribbean because we have not had resources for this. So by the time a child is 9 or 10, we kind of force them into a particular spot that is there for them, but we don't actually have the resources really very many resources really to actually develop and nurture that talent all the way up to something that they really want to do. And this is one of the things we have to be able to consider. So instead of creating a workforce, we need to be probably thinking about successful citizens for the future that we will create. And in that regard, the University of Guyana has been making some tiny steps. So we have a blueprint that looks to 2040, in which we try to envisage what the education of for the next 20 years is going to be required, not only for our own country, but for the region. We've just started a RAISER program, which works with 10 to 14-year-olds, bringing them into a residential camp and exposing them to an accelerated science and tech curriculum, so that they can be probably accelerated past their peers if they're talented. And this is a purely talent-based selection process that goes on here. And this is a collaboration with industry as well. Climate and environment, we really have to consider in the Caribbean with the number of catastrophic climate events that happen, and the effect that they have on education across the board, how mobile education will be. And in that question of mobility, of course, the question of tech connectivity and distribution, who owns the technology. I'm always worried about this reliance on all of this satellite technology, all of this internet technology, but really how much leverage and how much ownership and management currency resides in the Caribbean or with Caribbean people. And the question of how hooked up and hooked into technology we are in the region. The question of the extended mind. So are we going to seriously be considering educating people for regions in the future, or is this going to be a question of a planetary education at its core with some other aspects? The question of how a planetary educated mindset, because people are getting into universities all over the world online now. What does that do to all kinds of things about culture and mindset, and how we relate to each other as a people, and how we relate to our own spaces, is something that we want to consider. And whether or not, going back to this question of educating for the future that young people are talking about, or futures education, what is the language of the future? Is it going to be English, Spanish, French, Dutch, or is it going to be some kind of computer mediated language, or some one of those coding languages that we need to introduce very, very early now, not as a special thing, but something across the board? So we have to really begin to rethink and reform education, and embed academia, as I've been hearing all morning. So I think we're all together on this. Embed academia and education in business, and not the other way around. Business and tech. And we also have to consider, of course, the question of education tourism, which has been spoken about by many of the leaders, political leaders in the region already. How this is going to look, how this is going to be structured, and how we could actually leverage this as a very significant part of the conversation on tourism and tech. And then the question of the very distant future, or maybe not the distant future. And I always have to bring this in because people don't like to speak about this kind of stuff in the Caribbean, but I think we need to address it. We know now that we are only one blimp in the billions and billions of planets, in a multiverse. And therefore, the question of why our education is really only so Earth focused, when so much that is going on at a planetary level and interplanetary level is going to affect Earth and is affecting us. Is it not time for us to start to speak about an education that is a lot more, it has to be focused on Earth, but certainly includes another focus? Because if something happens, if for instance we find in some point in the near future, that we are not alone in the multiverse. How does this affect everything that we know and we do, and how will the human race, or Homo sapien as we are now, how are we going to address these questions if we just have them and we don't address them, because it becomes important. It becomes very important also that in this region we do have a very good two good sites, or more than two good sites for interplanetary tourism and travel. Now I'm going way out, so that is the very, 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 very far future, but maybe not. It's happening. So these are things that we want to speak about. And then finally, really, do we need to begin to frame a conversation around this kind of futurist questions on education, speak of an education transition for the region now? And again, the University of Guyana is working on this question. We do have an Institute for Excellence in Teaching and Learning that works on the question of education for the future. And then we also have an institute called the Institute for Human Resiliency, Strategic Security and the Future. And this one is the one that we are working on questions of the very far, far, far future, things like the nature of planetary interactions, and so on. So there are several things here to think about. It's not, I don't have a magic bullet. I don't think anybody does, but I believe that in the context of what we would be thinking about, and all of the data and wonderful presentations that we heard this morning from colleagues, a question about really, 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 really futurist thinking and how we institutionalize futurist thinking in education for the Caribbean and in policy is something that I really, really wanted to place a spotlight on and to focus upon in this very short whirlwind presentation. I thank you very much, and I think that's pretty much my 10 minutes there.
Hello. Thank you so much, Professor Paloma Mohammed Martin. It's been a wonderful conversation, and I like that you highlighted the need to embed academia in tech and then in tourism as well, which is actually the key to go. And there's a lot to learn from those of us in academia. So we are really happy that you could highlight on that. And thank you so much for your time. We are really grateful you could join us today.
Thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Okay. It's been a wonderful discussion so far, and we are wrapping things up as it is. We are going to close out, and to do that, I would like to introduce our CEO and the founder of Haiti Tech Summit, the CEO of Global Startup Ecosystem, in the person of Christine Intim, to close out the summit. Welcome, Christine. All right. The Caribbean Future Summit has been an interesting interesting journey throughout the years. For this year we decided to have this digital edition, and it's been an initiative that's been hosted by the Global Startup Ecosystem in partnership with Google Cloud, AWS, IBM, HubSpot, SendGrid, and many more. We are really thankful for their support over the years. The Caribbean Future Summit is the world's most iconic summit that has been curating an active network of Caribbean investors, tech entrepreneurs, celebrities, politicians, and business moguls. And the summit serves as a platform for influencers who are sourcing innovative solutions and partners that leverage exponential technology to accelerate Caribbean as the world's final tech frontier hub. This is why you could see a wide range of speakers on this year's summit that has that goes to show the influencers that we have within the Caribbean ecosystem. We've had so many speakers in various industries that have come on today to share their thought leadership. GSE is pushed by three main pillars of ecosystem engagement, which include entrepreneurship, employment, and education. We have various brands under the GSE management, which includes the Caribbean Future Summit, which has been in existence for the past 3 years. In 2020, when we launched the first annual Caribbean Future Summit, we also had a digital edition. It was one day as we had 20 speakers with 1,000 delegates and 20 global partners. We also had support from AWS, DigitalOcean, Google Cloud, HubSpot, IBM, SendGrid, and Sendex and SendGrid. We also returned in 2021 for the second annual edition, increased the speaker number to 25. It was an exciting summit last year, and we hope those of you that joined in last year enjoyed this as much as we did. And this year we've had the 2022 edition, which is the third annual, and we've wrapped it up nicely at the end where we heard from Dr. Paloma as well. We've had previous speakers from our summit, which include Jack Dorsey, the late Jovenel Moise, who is the late president of Haiti. We've had Michelle Sisson as well, and Ben Horowitz, among many others. We've had previous speakers from the Caribbean Future Summit, which include ambassadors, ministers, honorable ministers, and thought influencers from influential organizations, which include LinkedIn, Facebook, and many others. This year, we launched the Caribbean Tourism Career Accelerator, which is a career accelerator that is seeking to launch the careers of individuals who are interested in the tourism industry to leverage their career and leverage thought leadership from various speakers within the Caribbean to leverage tech within the tourism industry. These individuals went through 3 months of accelerator programming and internship as well. These are some of the speakers that were included in the Caribbean Tourism Career Accelerator. We launched this with the Haiti edition, and we'll be moving to other countries within the Caribbean region, which include Dominican Republic. Our top partners, as I mentioned earlier, include Google Cloud, IBM Cloud, HubSpot, Go with Google, AWS, DigitalOcean, Momentum, Africa Future Fund, our Metaverse Times, SendGrid, Vendedi, and the Caribbean Tech Group. We are really thankful to these top partners that allow us to bring these summits to all the regions that we are active in. At this point, we'll take a recap video from the Caribbean Future Summit, the 2021 edition.
Our diaspora continues to be one of the country's greatest underutilized assets for this country. The diaspora can become a major player in Jamaica's future development.
There are several factors for consideration, such as infrastructure, high performance, sports tourism, and job opportunities. Technology will be at the forefront of each of these factors that matter in sports.
So what Caribbean Export has recognized is that we have to really put business at the center of the economic drive for the Caribbean region.
And after all, if we're going to try to woo these investors, we need to ensure we have the enabling framework, not just the human resource endowment, but the legislative framework, the infrastructure, the ease of doing business.
Now, here's the point. It's not what you do that makes a festival, it's how you do it. Wherever you are, whatever the size of your community or its resources, you can create a science festival to promote a vision of your community's future.
Now, it is well known and an established fact that the Caribbean is the most tourism-dependent region on the planet.
If you bring the universities and the entrepreneurs together, how do you move that research out of the academic faculties into the factories?
I'm Flavio Gonzalez, in charge of international cooperation and promotion of the Embassy of Mexico to Trinidad and Tobago, concurrent with Barbados and Suriname. I congratulate you for participating in this important event.
So I want to start a conversation with everybody involved of just answering this question of how can we bridge the gap of career opportunities as well as entrepreneurial opportunities between the US and the Caribbean. It sounds like everyone here, or Canada and the Caribbean, everyone here has had that dual experience of being in the US and experience in the Caribbean.
This year's theme is going to be from diaspora engagement to investment, connecting to the Caribbean's economic future pillars, tourism, technology, and talent. We are truly excited about this opportunity and hope that all of you from wherever part of the Caribbean that you're logging in from is sharing thought leadership regarding the content that will be shared today during today's multi-hour program.
So that was the recap video from the Caribbean Future Summit. At this point, I'd like to welcome Christine and Tim, who is the founder of the Haiti Tech Summit and the CEO of Global Startup Ecosystem, to the stage. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you so much, Stan, and just showing my slides a little bit. And so thank you so much for passing it over. And again, just a warm closing remarks to everyone who've been a part of this year's edition of the Caribbean Future Summit. My name is Christine and Tim, the founder of the Global Startup Ecosystem, and we are the platform that powers all of these global summits and programs around the world. Of course, many of you knew our pillars of engagement around entrepreneurship, employment, and education. And we believe in pretty much the mission of empowering people, preparing people for the digital age. And we do that through inspiring people through tech and innovation. And so with that said, I do wanted to close out by sharing really a call to action, right? I think every single year with the Caribbean Future Summit, we not only rally the Caribbean ecosystem together across the region to discuss, what's happening in technology, how is it disrupting our industries and tourism, agriculture, music, obviously media, entertainment. And I think we're at the point as a region where we're also demanding more of our diaspora, we're demanding more of our locals, and we're demanding more of our partners globally to really tap into the Caribbean in a whole new way. And so I wanted to share a call to action that we at GSC with our partners at IDB Lab and Haiti Tech Summit was able to execute on this year. Obviously, we talked about this in 2020 when we launched the Caribbean Future Summit series, that unemployment is really a global crisis, but none more acute than places like the Africa and the Caribbean. And so we partner with various organizations over the past couple of years to really accelerating upskilling, development, and really preparing people for roles of the future. So I'm pleased to share that we successfully have launched the first edition of the Caribbean Tourism Career Accelerator. We started in Haiti, and of course, you'll hear an announcement of our expansion to Barbados, Trinidad, Dominican Republic, and other Caribbean nations. But I wanted to share with you that this initiative was, again, based on a part on how do we prepare young professionals for jobs in the future? And particularly one of the industries that is most influential within the Caribbean economy, which is tourism, right? We all know that tourism as an industry was transformed during the pandemic. And now looking at a post-pandemic era, how do we look at the tourism industry? And how does the Caribbean, which is so heavily dependent on tourism, how do they transform the workforce to prepare for what's next? And so the roles that we prepare people for in this program was arranged from travel agencies, waiters, chefs, hotel accountants, housekeepers, resort managers. I mean, you name it. If there was a role that was critical to the Caribbean ecosystem, we were able to train a cohort in Haiti regarding these roles. And the eligibility for this program, if you want to spread the word regarding this multi-year initiative that we're doing with the IDB Lab, is pretty much we're looking for young professionals between 18 and 35, graduated from high school, citizens of the Caribbean. They can't be diaspora, actual local citizens of the Caribbean ecosystem, who are fluent in English, Spanish, French, or any of the major tourism languages that people are able to receive tourists. and are open to this free skills training, which happens over the course of multiple weeks. Part one, as you can see, sessions here happens as accelerated program for the entire month. Then is followed up with, preparation cover resumes. It's pretty much getting you recruited for a role in tourism at one of our partner companies in the tourism industry within your respective country and within the region. And then it concludes virtually with essentially a internship with that organization, so you can apply what you learn. So it's very intense, dynamic, multi week program, but the goal is we are prepping the workforce for the tourism ecosystem of the future. And I want to give some stats on the demographics on this cohort and what we were amazed about in terms of the application, because it was extremely competitive, by the way. So we plan on expanding this program. But you would find that we did a good job trying to recruit as many female programs as possible, trying to reach 50-50 gender inclusion parity to make sure that we're inclusive and comprehensive. We definitely reached out to people who have not been employed before. The majority, if you can see from our participants here, we're not really employed, right? We're just sitting there with all this talent, all this amazing know-how, and just were not given an opportunity to really expand and have access to opportunity. And we were glad to put them in this program and get access to recruiters and opportunities through this accelerated program. And of course, all across the country. When we come into a Caribbean nation with this initiative, we don't look at just the capital. We look at the outskirts, the rural areas. Talent is everywhere. We don't need to be concentrated in the same cities every single time, especially when you're looking at impacts across the region. And of course, when I look at, have they ever worked in tourism before? 78% of our applicant pool never worked in tourism, even though tourism is a dominant industry within our regional economies. So I find it very interesting to see that, we are also giving people a different opportunity, a different career path, so to say, to tap into. They're around tourism. They see tourists all the time within their respective countries, but are they making a career out of it? So I thought that was really amazing. And of course, a variety of skills, because we teach them customer engagement, sales, digital marketing, customer service. In addition to this specific tourism industry skill sets, we also give them a wide range of skill sets, the top 10 skill sets that employers today are looking for. We train them on that. And the final thing is, I know with the region, connectivity and access to Wi-Fi and decent resources to get online is actually very difficult. So obviously we work with resources and make this opportunity accessible to all, whether you're in a rural area or a city area. But it was amazing to see the mobile penetration of many of our participants who were able to leverage their mobile Wi-Fi, their mobile phones to learn and get access to this opportunity. As you can see, more and more people are tapping into digital resources. Again, the pandemic has really forced people to think tech first. And so you're seeing a shift in not only the young demographic, but also the regional demographic in terms of being more tech enabled for career opportunities. And I found that to be very fascinating when it comes to our cohort. So with that said, I do want to conclude by saying that, we had an amazing lineup of powerful speakers for this year's edition, coming from all different backgrounds and walks of life. A huge thank you to all of our partners, from the Marriott to Digicel to IDB Lab to Google Cloud, to many different partners, who really tap into supporting this initiative at its best. And we challenge all of you, if you want to get involved with this initiative. Again, this is a multi-year initiative that's happening across the Caribbean. We have a 3-year partnership with IDB Lab to host this initiative across multiple countries. You can email us at programs@globalstartupfoundation.com, or you could tag us on social. I know our Haiti Tech Summit team partners are also a part of this. So truly amazing to have any of you get involved, engage with us if you want to be a part of this initiative. So I wanted to end on a high note and just share with you that people are doing stuff to really transform the region, taking it to the next place, to the next level. And this is our part, just one of the many initiatives that we're doing in the region beyond bringing people together through the Caribbean Future Summit. we are putting our money where our mouth is and really putting the resources and the time to put these programs together to really build the workforce for what's next in the region. So truly proud of the work that we've done in this region. Of course, many of the staff members that you see at GSC have been a part of this initiative, hosting these multiple sessions. I mean, this is something that we live and breathe. When it comes to preparing people for a digital future, we do it not only through our programming, but through our actions as well. And so wanted to conclude there and finally give a warm thank you to all of our speakers for this year's edition. I can't thank them enough. Our speakers came from UNDP, HubSpot, the St. Vincent and Grenadines government, Caribbean Tech Group. I mean, such a range. University of West Indies, University of Guyana. I mean, such a breadth of speakers today. And I'll conclude by saying that, the best thing that you could believe with the Caribbean Future Summit series is consistency. This is our third annual edition, ladies and gentlemen. We have been doing this for the past 3 years, and I look forward to engaging you next year for the next edition as we continue to bring the region together, onboard more partners, and facilitate growth, economic development through technology and innovation within the region. So again, thank you to all who've been a part of this year's edition. It's so amazing to see how this initiative has grown over the past couple of years. We get so many outreach to the work that we do in this region. We'll continue to put you first in bringing you to what's next, connect you to the top influencers, the top partners, the top ecosystem enablers that will accelerate the region as we love this Caribbean community that we so love and so empowered by to take it to the next level. So with that, thank you so much for being a part of this year's edition of the Caribbean Future Summit. I'm going to pass it over to Stan, who's going to close out with our final video. Welcome again, and congratulations to all of you for being a part of the third annual edition of the Caribbean Future Summit. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much to everyone that has been on this panel. Thank you, Christine, for that wonderful closing remarks. Thank you to all our speakers, our partners, and finally to our audience as well. Thank you for making this third annual edition a success. We'll see you next year for the fourth annual edition. Thank you, everyone.
So on this chart, you can see LinkedIn's hiring rate across a couple different countries.
The 313 stands for the deliverable. The 313 is a process that will help you to articulate your idea in 3 sentences, 1 sentence, and ultimately 3 words.
The pandemic has, in some ways for us as an innovation lab, only accelerated the way we wanted to work, the way we want to put innovation and technology at the service.
Whilst we already know that our tourism sector has been completely decimated across the region. So we have to really try and find other solutions.
But there are a lot of opportunities in the Caribbean region. As you know, we suffered a major brain drain for many, many years.
How many of you have heard this question where you're applying for the job, they say you don't have any experience, but you need experience to have experience?
Our diaspora continues to be one of the country's greatest underutilized assets for this country. The diaspora can become a major player in Jamaica's future development.
There are several factors for consideration, such as infrastructure, high performance, sports tourism, and job opportunities. Technology will be at the forefront of each of these factors that matter in sports.
So what Caribbean Export has recognized is that we have to really put business at the center of the economic drive for the Caribbean region.
And after all, if we're going to try to woo these investors, we need to ensure we have the enabling framework, not just the human resource endowment, but the legislative framework, the infrastructure, the ease of doing business.
Now, here's the point. It's not what you do that makes a festival, it's how you do it. Wherever you are, whatever the size of your community or its resources, you can create a science festival to promote a vision of your community's future.
Now, it is well known and an established fact that the Caribbean is the most tourism-dependent region on the planet.
If you bring the universities and entrepreneurs together, how do you move that research out of the academic faculties into the factories?
I'm Flavio Gonzalez, in charge of international cooperation and promotion of the Embassy of Mexico to Trinidad and Tobago, concurrent with Barbados and Suriname. I congratulate you for participating in this important event.
So I want to start a conversation with everybody involved of just answering this question of how can we bridge the gap of career opportunities as well as entrepreneurial opportunities between the US and the Caribbean. It sounds like everyone here, or Canada and the Caribbean, everyone here has had that dual experience of being in the US and experience in the Caribbean.
This year's theme is going to be from diaspora engagement to investment, connecting to the Caribbean's economic future pillars, tourism, technology, and talent. We are truly excited about this opportunity and hope that all of you from wherever part of the Caribbean that you're logging in from is sharing thought leadership regarding the content that will be shared today during today's multi-hour program.